bank doesn't want you bankrupt. That would be bad for business. What they want is something far more profitable. They want you just broke enough to rely on fees, just stressed enough to accept bad financial products, just desperate enough to stay trapped. And there's one specific number that breaks that cycle. Today, we're breaking down why $20,000 in savings completely transforms your financial life, and why banks quietly hate it when you get there. Life below $20,000. Constant financial pressure. Life below $20,000 in savings is defined by mental math. Every purchase triggers calculations. Can you afford groceries and gas this week? If you pay this bill today, will the next payment bounce? How many days until payday? There's no margin for error and no room for surprises. Unexpected expenses don't feel like inconveniences. They feel like emergencies. A car repair becomes a crisis. A medical bill creates panic. A broken appliance feels catastrophic. You're not planning, you're reacting. Living this way keeps you one bad month away from credit card debt, one job disruption away from disaster, one unlucky break away from a spiral that can take years to escape. This isn't poor planning, it's structural vulnerability. And roughly 60% of Americans live in this state every day. The $20,000 threshold, where everything changes. There is a financial threshold where stress drops sharply and control returns. That number isn't $100,000. It isn't $50,000. It's $20,000. For most people, $20,000 represents 4 to 6 months of living expenses. That's not a starter emergency fund. That's real protection. With that cushion, emergencies stop being existential threats. A car repair becomes manageable. A medical expense becomes stressful, but solvable. A job loss becomes time to think, not time to panic. The constant background anxiety finally quiets down. You stop living in fear of your balance hitting zero. You sleep better. You think clearer. And that psychological shift is where the real power begins. Why $20,000 makes you unprofitable to banks. Here's the part banks don't advertise. When you cross $20,000 in savings, you stop being profitable. Banks don't make most of their money from people with strong buffers. They make it from people who live close to the edge, from volatility, from stress, from mistakes forced by scarcity. Once you have a solid savings cushion, multiple revenue streams quietly dry up, and banks notice. Overdraft fees. Overdraft fees are one of the most profitable products in banking. Last year alone, banks collected billions in overdraft fees. These fees don't come from wealthy customers. They come from people whose balances dip slightly below zero, sometimes by just a few dollars. A $5 shortfall can trigger a $35 fee. Multiple transactions clearing at once can trigger multiple fees in a single day. Some people lose hundreds of dollars in overdraft fees without realizing how it happened. But when you have $20,000 in savings, overdrafts simply don't occur. There's always a buffer. Automatic transfers cover shortfalls. The bank earns nothing from you here. That's one major profit source gone. Desperation products stop working. Banks and lenders love desperation. When someone needs money urgently and has no savings, their options are terrible. High-interest credit cards, predatory personal loans, payday loans with triple-digit APRs, title loans that risk taking a car. Desperate people don't negotiate. They don't shop around. They accept whatever terms get cash into their hands fastest. But when you have $20,000, desperation disappears. Need $2,000 for an emergency? You transfer it from savings. No application, no interest, no fees. No lender profits from your urgency. That entire category of emergency products becomes irrelevant. Credit card interest becomes optional. Credit cards are another major profit center. The average American with credit card debt pays over $1,000 per year in interest alone. That money doesn't buy anything. It doesn't reduce the balance meaningfully. It simply flows to the bank. People below the $20,000 threshold often carry balances because they have no alternative. They use credit cards as emergency funds. They pay minimums. Interest compounds. With $20,000 in savings, that cycle breaks. You pay your credit cards in full every month. You earn rewards. You pay zero interest. Internally, credit card companies have a term for customers like this. They call you a deadbeat, not because you're irresponsible, but because you're unprofitable. Account fees and minimum balances. Many banks charge monthly maintenance fees on basic accounts. These fees are often waived if you maintain a minimum balance, usually a few $1,000s. People living paycheck to paycheck struggle to maintain those balances consistently. Money comes in, then goes right back out. Fees quietly drain $150 or more per year just for holding money. With $20,000 in savings, minimum balance requirements are effortless. Fees vanish. Another revenue stream dries up. Financial stress creates profitable behavior. One of the most overlooked profit drivers is psychological. Financial stress changes how people behave. It leads to impulsive purchases, bad financing decisions, and rushed agreements. Stressed people say yes to bad deals because they don't have time or emotional capacity to say no. Banks understand this. Stress makes people easier to upsell, easier to pressure, easier to extract fees from. But when you have $20,000, decision-making slows down. You can walk away, you can wait, you can negotiate. That mental clarity is dangerous to banks. Scarcity brain versus breathing room. Below $20,000, most people operate in scarcity mode. Every decision is about survival. Can I afford this? What if something goes wrong? I can't risk it. Scarcity brain is exhausting. It's reactive. It kills long-term thinking. Above $20,000, something shifts. You're not rich, but you have breathing room. Options appear. You can take a job with better growth instead of higher immediate pay. You can leave a toxic workplace. You can wait for better opportunities. Options change everything. How $20,000 restores leverage in your life. Money is not just a financial tool. It is leverage. When you live below the $20,000 threshold, you have very little of it. Employers know you need the paycheck. Banks know you need liquidity. Lenders know you don't have time to negotiate. Every relationship tilts slightly against you. But once you have $20,000 saved, that dynamic changes. You don't need to accept the first offer. You don't need to tolerate bad terms. You don't need to stay in situations that no longer serve you. You gain the ability to say no, and that single word is powerful. In the workplace, leverage means you can leave a job that underpays or mistreats you. You can wait for a better role instead of jumping at the first opportunity. You can invest in skills, education, or relocation without fear of immediate collapse. In financial decisions, leverage means patience. You can compare products. You can read the fine print. You can walk away from loans that don't make sense. You stop being a reactive customer and become a deliberate one. Banks don't fear the money itself. They fear the independence it creates. Why financial independence starts before wealth. Most people think financial independence begins when you're wealthy. It doesn't. It begins when emergencies stop controlling your decisions. $20,000 doesn't make you rich, it makes you stable. And stability is the foundation of every other financial milestone that follows. Once stability is achieved, your brain shifts from defense to offense. Instead of asking, "How do I survive this month?" you start asking, "How do I improve next year?" Long-term planning becomes possible. Risk becomes calculated instead of terrifying. This is why progress accelerates after the first major savings milestone. The habits that get you to $20,000 are the same habits that take you far beyond it. But now they operate in a calmer environment. Momentum replaces panic. The myth that $20,000 is too much. One of the most damaging beliefs is that $20,000 is unrealistic. It isn't. It feels unreachable because most people try to save while fighting constant financial fires. They're paying interest, fees, and penalties that quietly erase progress. They're trying to fill a bucket with holes in it. Once those leaks are addressed, overdraft fees eliminated, credit card interest reduced, unnecessary subscriptions cut, saving accelerates. $20,000 is not built in a month. It's built through consistency, through automation, through small wins compounded over time. And once you get close, something surprising happens. Saving becomes easier. Why banks prefer you at $2,000 instead? From a bank's perspective, $2,000 in savings is ideal. It looks responsible, it feels safe, but it's not enough to change behavior. At $2,000, you're still vulnerable. One emergency wipes it out. One mistake sends you back to debt. You still need credit cards. You still need short-term loans. You still generate fees. At $20,000, those vulnerabilities disappear. You stop cycling through the most profitable financial products. You stop paying for access to your own money. You stop subsidizing the system through mistakes forced by scarcity. That's why no one advertises this number. How people accidentally stay below the line. Most people don't fail to reach $20,000 because they're irresponsible. They fail because their system works against them. Money flows in, then flows right back out. Raises get absorbed by lifestyle inflation. Bonuses disappear into consumption. Savings becomes optional instead of automatic. The key difference among people who cross the threshold is not income. It's structure. They automate savings. They treat savings like a non-negotiable bill. They build buffers before upgrading lifestyles. Once savings becomes a priority instead of an afterthought, progress compounds quietly. Why momentum accelerates after $20,000? The first $20,000 is the hardest. Not because it's the largest amount you'll ever save, but because you're doing it without leverage, without margin, and often without confidence. Afterward, momentum builds. Interest becomes noticeable. Stress decreases. Decision-making improves. Opportunities appear that you would have missed before. You invest more effectively because you're not afraid of volatility. Wealth doesn't grow linearly. It grows in stages. And $20,000 is one of the most important stages. The quiet confidence banks can't monetize. There's a subtle change that happens once you're no longer financially fragile. You stop rushing. You stop reacting emotionally to every bill, every email, every unexpected expense. You respond instead of panic. You choose instead of accept. That calm confidence is invisible, but powerful. And it's completely unprofitable. Banks can't charge fees for confidence. They can't monetize patience. They can't profit from stability, which is why the system quietly benefits when most people never reach it. Banks don't fear people with $20,000 saved because they're powerful. They fear them because they're independent. Independent people don't rush. They don't panic. They don't accept bad deals out of desperation. And in a system built on urgency and dependence, independence is the one thing that can't be sold back to you.